Hi, everyone. My name is Tanya Hertz. I'm the director and the founder of the Innovation Lab, which is a startup incubator at San Diego Miramar College. I'm also an educator of entrepreneurship at San Diego Miramar College and San Diego State University. I've actually been teaching entrepreneurship for a little over a decade, and I'm the director of the entrepreneurship program at Miramar as well. So I've been teaching entrepreneurship a long time. Not to brag, but I do uh, I do know a lot about entrepreneurship, and I've been doing this for a while. And the reason that I say that is I want you to have a little background about who I am when I talk to you about uh, how I recommend that you value your startup. Uh, I have some pretty strong opinions on the subject, and it's just from years of helping companies to start, helping people to value their business, and just seeing so many bad valuation methods. So that's that. Let's get started on the business valuation 101, the basics of valuing our business together. And we're going to dive right in by starting with a definition of valuation. So what is valuation? It's the present market value uh, as agreed upon by the founders and the investors. So investors expect you to have a valuation, but startups, especially when they're very early stage, they don't have a lot of revenue, and figuring out the valuation of a company, it really is a combination of both an art and a hard science. But in the past, it's been more of an art than a hard science, and a lot more subjective than it necessarily needs to be, in my opinion. Excuse me. So today we're going to walk you through the different methods of valuing a startup so that you can understand what price tag you should put on your business, so you're going to be able to make deals the right way and your own way. And with that being said, let's look a little bit what goes into valuing a startup. So if you're looking at an existing business, you're going to see that it's very highly based on revenue, on earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, and that means that there's data to back it up. But even if you have revenue as a startup, that's not the most important thing that investors want to know about. They want to know about the founders, about the founding team. They want to know about whether or not you have any traction, right? Whether or not you have any customers. What kind of research have you done on your customers? What does it look like in terms of your customer discovery? Have you spoken to 15 people or 150 people? And what did they say? And how strong um, is that demand for your product? How big is the problem that you're solving? What is it, a pain point, or is it more of just a nuisance? All of those things matter to investors. And like I said, the traditional way of valuing companies is EBIT. It's earnings before interest, taxes, or it can be EBITDA. So earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation and amortization. Either way, it's all about relying upon the data um, of the company, and it's really straightforward. So people do this all the time. They're used to doing this. This is how they value businesses that they're going to invest in. And it, we also, I mean, this method has been around forever, but it's just not useful for startups. It's not relevant for startups. Valuing startups it has to be done another way. And the methods that we see for valuing startups, like the Burkus method, or even the venture capital method, and some of the other methods, uh, they're great, except for the fact that they rely upon the founders to come up with a valuation. And founders can be a little bit biased, right? We're human beings, and we're subject to common biases, common logical fallacies, and cognitive biases. So this gives us values that very often are not accurate. So false consensus bias, in case or false consensus confirmation. We'll start with a confirmation bias. So the confirmation bias is a bias that we as humans are have the propensity to fall victim to, and that's the fact that we typically look for things that confirm what we already believe. We typically think that other people think the way that we think. So that's why when you ask people who smoke what percentage of the population smokes, they're going to give a much higher number than non-smokers. And this can be a problem when valuing businesses. The false consensus effect is the tendency that people have to overestimate how much other people agree with their own beliefs, behaviors, attitudes, and values. So thinking that people share your opinion on controversial topics, overestimating the number of people who are similar to you, believing that the majority of people share your preferences. These are problematic, right? And researchers believe that the false consensus effect happens for a number of different reasons. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we uh, spend so much time with our family and friends, and we start thinking the same as they think. And so it gives us this idea that everyone thinks this way. Now, another confirmation bias that cognitive bias that we fall victim to is the self-serving bias. And that's the tendency for people to give themselves credit when they succeed, and to basically blame other people or outside factors when we fail, and or blaming things, other circumstances, bad luck, something like this. So uh, I see this all the time as an educator, where people will attribute good grades to being smart or studying hard, but bad grades, oh, you got to blame it on the teacher, right? Or blame it on an unfair system or something like this. Um, this is problematic. This is problematic. And the optimism bias is another fallacy that humans tend to fall victim to, and that's the tendency to overestimate the likelihood that good things are going to happen while underestimating the probability that bad things are going to happen. Essentially, it's being too optimistic for our own good. Now, think about all of these biases, and there's so many more cognitive biases that that can be problematic. Think of how these could come into play when you're valuing a startup. They can lead to overly optimistic or overly high numbers, and they cause startups to be their startup values to be just too subjective, uh, and any of the methods that the existing methods that I've seen and I've used over the years are just not good because of this. And this is why I've come up with a tool that I've been using, and it's giving really excellent results, uh, because it doesn't rely on just the startup startup founders. So when you're valuing businesses, there's private and then public market valuation. So there's valuation of existing businesses, valuation of startups. And when you're valuing a startup, it's similar to valuing an existing business. It's and some are more similar than others, but you can use the discounted cash flow method. You can estimate the future value of a current asset, and instead of cap rate, you would use the required rate of return of the investors. And there's but there are differences as well. So there's a lot of other factors that typically can't be easily measured. So I again, there's a lot of subjectivity to it, and where there's so little subjectivity in the analysis and evaluation of existing businesses, it's it's not the same with startups. So I'm going to show you the method that I've been using here in a little bit, but first I want to make sure that you understand the basic terms. So including pre-money and post-money, and pre-money and post-money valuation, it's not that one is better or one is worse, but they're different, and you need to understand the differences, uh, especially when you're talking about giving up equity of your company, because what we're talking about, typically the use for the valuation of the business is to give up equity, uh, equity funding, right? Bringing in angel investors or venture capitalists, and that means you're giving up ownership of your company. So it's important that you understand this well. Please, I don't ever want to hear you say, "Oh, I don't need to worry about understanding the valuation. I have, I have somebody who does that for me," or um, I've seen this a lot when people get accepted into like an incubator or something, and they have advice. Well, that's wonderful, but you need to understand it, right? This is your ownership. This is your business. And I've seen too many times people lose the controlling interest in their organization because they don't understand it. So don't let that happen to you. Pre and post money valuation. So pre-money valuation, it's the valuation before you actually raise that money. Um, before each round of raising money, and post money is after. As simple as that, after the current round of investing. So if you see here on this little chart, pre-money is in blue, the new capital is in orange, and post money is this total amount, right? The sum of the two, the whole pie here. And so the relation can be expressed, the formula is pre-money valuation plus new money from the investing round, equals the post-money valuation. Again, pre-money is in blue, new investment capital, the money that you're raising, is in orange, and then post-money is this total piece of the pie. Okay. Now let's go ahead and do some samples so that we make sure that you understand this concept. So you're raising $200,000 at a $2 million pre-money valuation, implies that the post-money valuation is $2.2 million, right? So 200,000 is what you're raising. Your $2 million is your pre-money valuation. So your post-money valuation is $2.2 million. So let's say you're selling 10% of a $4 million post-money valuation. That means that you're raising how much? 4 million at 10% is 400,000. So what is your pre-money valuation? Well, it would be 400,000 out of 4 million. So 3,600,000, right? Is your pre-money valuation. Right? So it's also a good idea to know, you need to know how to calculate an investor's percentage ownership of a startup based on whatever that particular investment is. So the formula for that is percentage ownership equals the investment amount divided by the post-money valuation. So for example, assume that the business is raising $400,000 at $1.6 million pre-money valuation. So you invest $1,000 in common shares, and how much do you own? So I'll give you a minute. You can push pause here, actually, if you want to do the math. See if you can do the math and see if you get the same answer as I get. Okay. So the business is raising $400,000 at a $1.6 million pre-money valuation. You invest $1,000 in common shares. How much do you own? Well, first you need to determine what the post-money valuation is. So 400,000 plus 1.6 million equals obviously 2 million. And divide the investment by step one, post, right? So your investment was 1,000, your post-money valuation is 2 million, equals 0.05% ownership. So that's how much ownership you would have in that particular company. So what if the business was raising the same 400,000, but the 1.6 was the post-money valuation? Post-money valuation. Well, you would just take the 1,000 divided by the post-money valuation, 1.6 million, equals 0.0625% ownership. That's 25% more ownership than the pre-money case. So think about this as a startup founder. Does it matter if you're giving a value of pre-money value versus a post-money value? Well, heck yes, it matters. Obviously, it matters. So you really need to understand the difference, and you need to make sure that you know how much of your company you're giving away for any given amount. All right. So what kind of valuation methods do we actually use? Well, there are three primary methods. The three primary methods that we use in valuing businesses are the discounted cash flow approach, the comparable company analysis, the comps method, and then the cost analysis, the cost method. And there's other methods that are used. And like I said, we've used these for years. They're used in investment banking and equity research, private equity, corporate development, M&A, leveraged buyouts, basically finance, right? You learn these in your MBA classes. You take classes at college in your MBA just solely on valuing businesses. They're actually fun classes to take. It's like solving puzzles, but they're really straightforward, right? You just plug and chug. But again, these methods rely on EBIT, and for a number of years, it was almost expected that you would use these existing methods of business valuation for startups, and it was so frustrating because you don't have revenue always. And even if you do have revenue, it's not as important as other things. And so beyond those three primary methods of valuing businesses, there are other methods that we'll look at for startups, including the Berkus method, which is really, really simple, which makes it nice. And then the REC method, which is, it's almost like a combination of the discounted cash flow method, which is the preferred method by most venture capitalists and actually by most financial analysts. It's discounting the value of 5 years or 3 years out back to the present value. And so it's a combination of that, and then also combined with almost like the some scorecard methods and a little bit of the Berkus method and a little bit of the other startup methods, and then adding to it peers. So beyond knowing how to raise or how to value businesses, you also need to know typically how much is raised at different stages in startups, and then also what are typical values. It's really, really important that you know this so that you make sure that you're on track and that the method that you're using for valuing the business, and totally up to you which method you use, but you need to know that the method that you use is doing its job and that you're pretty on track compared to others. So these are the different stages of, the typical stages of startups, starting with pre-seed, where most of the money that's raised are the FFFs from the FFFs. And if you are an entrepreneur, you know what the FFFs are. It's a kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that the only people who give money to very early stage businesses are friends, families, and fools. And and us here at the Rec, right? But this is where a lot of the businesses that we have at our incubator are pre-seed or seed stage, very early stage businesses. Growth stage, Series A, B, and IPO are the different rounds of funding. I've also included the maturity levels at each of the different funding rounds, the typical raise, and then the typical valuation. Now, this is based on data of over 5,000 startups, and this is data from 2019 and 20. So it's the most current data that we have. So you can see at the very early stage, pre-seed and seed stage, when you're just in idea development, you might have an MVP or a functional prototype at this point. The typical raise is anywhere from less than $500,000 to $2 million. And the typical company valuation, how much the company's worth, is anywhere from 1 million to, or less than 1 million to $10 million to $10 million. And I will say, when you look at the typical raise and the typical post-market cap rate, or the company capitalization, the value of a company, at IPO, the average is $515 million. And that's why, if you've ever heard me, I always am laughing when startup founders say to me, yeah, my exit strategy is to have an IPO. And I always laugh and I think, yeah, wouldn't that be great? All of us want that, right? That's the goal for almost every one of us. But it's not as common as you would think when you first get started. However, a lot of the founders that have gone through the entrepreneurship classes, my entrepreneurship classes, and then a lot of the mentors at the Rec have had successful exits of their companies. And I think that sometimes, like, I don't know if people realize like what a big deal it is until they start seeing the numbers. And then when you start seeing those numbers, that's when you kind of get it and go, oh, I get it now. That guy's rich, right? Or that girl's rich, right? Here's some more data that I used actually for when I was coming up with and figuring out this method of valuation. We also want to look at the dilution by round. So the dilution means how much equity are companies giving away at each of the different rounds. And again, based on more than 5,000 startups, we found that when you combine the pre-seed and seed stage startups, they on average give away 26% of their ownership, and then it goes down 15%, 11, 7, blah, 8, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. I also wanted to show you some other sources of information. And the reason why this matters so much is because we want to make sure that whenever we are saying or doing anything in entrepreneurship, that it's validated, and that we're not just relying on our assumptions, but relying on validated assumptions, things that we can show that we have researched. And so I also included this matrix. It's from Jason. I can't pronounce his name. I think it's Calacanis, something like this. Anyways, I thought this was interesting. It's a little hand-drawn valuation traction matrix, and it shows if along the x-axis at the bottom here, this is time, right? And as a startup moves through idea towards the mock-up, towards the MVP, towards piloting their business idea first for free, then getting paid, and then eventually having revenue, it shows the different valuations that they have. And this green line here is that of an average startup. And some will have some businesses will have a lower value, some will have a higher value. And when it has a lower value, I'm sorry, when I take that back. So when we're talking about value here, this might seem a little unclear because it's a higher valuation, but a lower value. And you might be thinking like, what the heck is she talking about? This is a higher valuation. Well, what they're talking about is the value to the investor, So for an investor, this would be lower value because it's a higher price, even though it hasn't gone as far forward in time. And that's because maybe there are factors at play, like a famous founder, or maybe they've gone through Y Combinator, or they're up in Silicon Valley, which in this particular person's opinion, it would mean that the valuation is less value to the investor. However, there's plenty of research that shows that Y Combinator has if they do go through Y Combinator demo day, they have a much higher probability of being successful startups. And if they've started something before, they have a higher probability as well. So I don't necessarily agree with the lower, higher value to the investor, but I do agree with other parts of this. All right, moving on. So typical funds raised in startup, again, the valuation is between $1 to $10 million in this stage, and then in these rounds, and then the average amount given away is about 26%. All of that matters because I use that to calculate. What the future value would be of the average startup, and then created a tool that all of you are welcome to use if you'd like. And I'm going to show you. It's here. I'll show you the table. So let's see here in this exit, and there's a link to it in this PowerPoint, and the table is here. And I did this based on. So it's based on the discounted cash flow method, and it's based on the average startups and the average amount that typical startups give away. And it's, if you, as a startup founder, if you have your company rated on 10 different variables that are predictive of future business performance and company value, and there are other methods that do that, but there are no methods that do that and take and get feedback from industry experts in order to do that. And so it came to me when I realized that so much of what the judges at our different pitch competitions are actually doing is they're helping you to value your business. And it was one of those aha moments for me where I just was, it hit me, and I thought, like, hello, this is exactly what's been missing, is that we didn't have the feedback from others. And so this is like, I think it's really useful. And I've actually now gone through and done several startup valuations and gotten really, really excellent values, the same or very similar values to going through and using the venture capital method, which is a lot more precise. And you do that when you have more, you need more information on the organization, and you need some revenue history. But when I had that and I did this, I was getting same value. So that was really exciting. So basically how you use this is you can take this scorecard, and there's a rubric here that gives you it gives you more details about what each of the different factors or components are looking for. And you score each of these factors from 1 to 10. And it's similar to the rubric that we use at the pitch competitions. And so you might already have data from judges, and so you could value your business right now if you have access to that data. If not, you could go and get the the judges to help you with it, or get experts to help you with it, mentors, etc. And then you rank your startup on timing, on your customer, and also your customer discovery is part of it. The problem solution, market opportunity, progress and traction, competitors, the team, the founding team. And then there are three other categories, which these have been added. I added these because there were correlative studies that showed that these were, especially right now, predictive of value and indicative of future organizational success. And so added those three, which are social impact, excellent branding, and storytelling. So your ability to actually convey what it is that you're selling. And then that X factor, the human element, that's that, is the startup. Is there something that sets it apart? Does it have a famous founder? Is there a buzz, right? Do the investors have this sense of FOMO that if they don't invest, they're going to be kicking themselves because you're going to be the next big thing? If it has that, then you would rank it higher. And then it takes, if you go back to the scorecard, the founders, you yourself, you can put your your assessment in there, and then you can even have a couple of the other founders, right? The other team give their assessment, but you want to have at least equal experts, if not greater experts than just the founders, and that'll give you a more accurate pre-money valuation, right? So that's what we're getting at. We're getting at this pre-money valuation. This is, you would go through, you would rank each one of these 1 to 10. And so timing, right? Are you in a nascent or rapidly growing market or industry? Is there a clear or pressing gap in the market? Are you taking advantage of trends in demographics, technology, or economy? If that's a very, very high score, you would give it anywhere from 7 to 10. The majority of these will be on the average, and that's between 4 and 6. And then even a good, even if you could say, yes, that's true, but not, very, very true, it's 1 to 3. So go through, score all of these different categories 1 to 10, and then add them all up. Well, this actual scorecard does it for you. And then it takes that number of the number that you have of all of those added together, and then it multiplies this by a multiplier that gives us a value between 1 million and 10 million. And so it gives you your value of your startup. So this value of the startup would say that is 2,100,000, and then the typical raised based on that valuation. So the typical amount that is given away, the dilution, 26%, would be 546,000. So you could realistically ask for that from investors, and that gives you a post valuation of 2 million, roughly 2,600,000. And yeah, so I think it'll be useful for you. It's a newer newer tool, but honestly, I like it better than any of the other ones that I've used. I shouldn't say that, but it's true. I like it better than any of the other ones I use. This is what I normally use, would be like the discounted cash flow method evaluation, the venture capital method. And you see, it's based on sales, on EBIT, right? Tax, etc. When you don't have those numbers, you're not going to get a very realistic assessment. Okay. Right. Let's see here. Let's go back to this. All right. I think that's it. If you have any questions, let me know. Visit the REC website. You can sign up for workshops here. Follow us on social media. And I hope you found this useful. And I hope that I'm really excited to see. How people use this, and the values that we have. And I should say this. I didn't say this before. When you're valuing your startup, right? You're going to then take it to investors. you have to be able to justify whatever value you give. And the better you are at justifying the value, the more likely you are at getting the money that you're asking for. And this is an excellent way for you to say, look, I have data. I have data to show I can prove the value. I didn't just make it up. And before, I felt like so many of the methods that people were using were just way too subjective. It was just like, I'm making this up. And I hate that, right? In entrepreneurship, it's all about not relying on intuition or just making things up, but really relying uh, on evidence. And so this gives us evidence. And so I hope that you find it useful, and you can raise all the money that you're looking for with it. Right. Okay. All right. I will see you in the next video. I have a video coming up that I'll talk about meeting with investors, and talk to you later. All right. Bye, everybody. Take care.